Imagine waking up to news that protesters have set fire to your nation's parliament building and torched the homes of top political leaders. This isn't a scene from a dystopian movie. This is the reality that unfolded in Nepal in September 2025, forcing Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign as the country's army took control of the streets. But here's what most people don't know: this explosive moment isn't just about a social media ban or corruption scandals. It's the culmination of a 30-year struggle that began with a bloody civil war, witnessed the end of the world's last Hindu kingdom, and continues to haunt a nation that can't seem to escape its cycle of political chaos. To understand why Nepal is burning today, we need to go back to where it all started, and the story is more shocking than you might imagine. To understand today's political turmoil, we must trace back to Nepal's transformation from an absolute monarchy to a federal republic. Parliamentary democracy was introduced in 1951 but was twice suspended by Nepalese monarchs, in 1960 and 2005. The Nepalese Civil War in the 1990s and early 2000s resulted in the establishment of a secular republic in 2008, ending the world's last Hindu monarchy. The roots of Nepal's political instability stretch back to the late 20th century when the country was still under royal rule. Until 1990, Nepal was an absolute monarchy running under the executive control of the king. Faced with a people's movement against the absolute monarchy, King Birendra, in 1990, agreed to large-scale political reforms by creating a parliamentary monarchy with the king sharing power with elected officials. However, this transition to constitutional monarchy proved fragile and short-lived. The real catalyst for Nepal's modern political crisis came with the emergence of the Maoist insurgency in the mid-1990s. The Nepalese Civil War was a protracted armed conflict that took place in the then Kingdom of Nepal from 1996 to 2006. It saw countrywide fighting between the kingdom rulers and the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist, with the latter making significant use of guerrilla warfare. The conflict began on February 13, 1996, when the Nepalese Civil War was launched by the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist, with the aim of overthrowing the kingdom and establishing a People's Republic. This wasn't merely an ideological struggle, it was a response to decades of political exclusion, economic inequality, and social discrimination that had plagued Nepalese society under monarchical rule. The civil war escalated dramatically following a tragic event that changed Nepal's political landscape forever. On the 1st of June 2001, 9 members of the royal family, including King Birendra and Queen Aishwarya, were killed in what became known as the Royal Massacre. This event destabilized the monarchy and created a power vacuum that intensified the ongoing conflict. The war's impact was devastating, with thousands of casualties and widespread displacement. The civil war developed into a military and political stalemate that ended in 2005. Protests against the political and economic situation drew an estimated 100,000 to 200,000 in Nepal's capital Kathmandu and 5 million in the entire country. The civil war's resolution came through a comprehensive peace process that fundamentally transformed Nepal's political system. Elections for a constituent assembly of some 600 members were held in April 2008, and the following month the monarchy was indeed dissolved and Nepal declared a republic. This marked a historic transition from the world's last Hindu kingdom to a federal democratic republic. However, the end of the monarchy and civil war did not translate into political stability. In November 2017, Nepal had its first general election since the civil war ended and the monarchy was abolished. The main alternatives were centrist Nepali Congress Party and the alliance of former Maoist rebels and the Communist UML Party. The alliance of communists won the election, but political coalitions remained fragile and constantly shifting. The ongoing political instability has been characterized by frequent government changes, weak coalitions, and an inability to address fundamental governance issues. The country remains polarized between the two main party coalitions, the Communist parties and the Nepali Congress, which differ sharply on domestic politics, foreign affairs and economic policy. This domestic political contest looks set to continue, hindering economic progress. This polarization has created a cycle of weak governments and frequent changes in leadership that has prevented consistent policy implementation and institutional strengthening. What are your thoughts about Nepal's political future? What do you think are the key challenges facing Nepali democracy today? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss the path forward for this struggling Himalayan nation. The recent protests that led to Prime Minister Ollie's resignation represent more than just dissatisfaction with a social media ban. They reflect deeper systemic issues that have plagued Nepal since its republican transition. In 2024, Nepal has navigated political instability, economic growth, and diplomatic challenges, with a new coalition government seeking to stabilize the nation's trajectory and international relations. However, stability has remained elusive, and the current crisis reveals several critical problems that have persisted since the transition to republic. The lack of justice for conflict-era crimes has contributed to a widespread crisis of impunity in Nepal, undermining human rights, governance, and the rule of law. Police officers accused of recent rights violations were not held accountable, while investigations of corruption allegations were met with political interference. This culture of impunity has fueled public anger and contributed to the current protests. The corruption extends beyond individual cases to systemic issues where political leaders have used their positions for personal gain while failing to deliver basic services to citizens. The current protests are notably led by younger Nepalese who have grown up in the post-monarchy era. They represent a generation that expected democratic governance to deliver better outcomes than what they've experienced. Nepal's army has taken control of the streets and is effectively in charge for now, highlighting the severity of the current crisis. This generational divide reflects a broader disconnect between political elites who participated in the transition from monarchy and younger citizens who feel excluded from political processes despite living their entire lives under democratic rule. Around 40% of Nepal's population is under 18, but only around 4% of the government's social security budget is targeted at children. Nepal's Child Grant, a proven social security program, currently benefits only a minority of children aged under 5. This disparity highlights the government's failure to address the needs of its young population, contributing to social unrest. The economic situation has been further complicated by Nepal's delicate position between two regional giants, India and China. Nepal's future is characterized by political instability, economic vulnerabilities and shifting alliances with India, China and the United States. This geopolitical balancing act has often led to policy paralysis and missed economic opportunities. Nepal's current crisis must be understood as part of a longer historical trajectory. The country has undergone remarkable transformations, from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy to republic, in just a few decades. Each transition has brought hope for better governance, but also new challenges. The Civil War period, while devastating, ultimately led to important political reforms and the inclusion of previously marginalized groups in the political process. The integration of former Maoist rebels into mainstream politics demonstrated the possibility of peaceful conflict resolution. However, the current crisis suggests that the fundamental issues that sparked the original conflict, inequality, corruption, and lack of responsive governance, remain unresolved. The recent protests, particularly their youth-led character, indicate that a new generation of Nepalese is demanding accountability and effective governance. Their willingness to challenge authority, even at great personal risk, echoes the spirit of the pro-democracy movements that ended absolute monarchy and the Civil War. This continuity of democratic aspiration across generations suggests that despite institutional weaknesses, Nepal's commitment to democratic governance remains strong. Nepal's political instability has implications beyond its borders. As a landlocked country between India and China, Nepal's stability affects regional security and economic cooperation. The current crisis could complicate Nepal's relationships with both neighbors and impact ongoing development projects and trade agreements. The international community's response to Nepal's crisis will be crucial. Support for democratic institutions and processes, rather than backing particular political factions, will be essential for long-term stability. The lessons learned from Nepal's transition from conflict to democracy could also inform peace-building efforts in other post-conflict societies. As Nepal navigates this latest crisis, the lessons from its complex political evolution, from the pro-democracy movements of the 1990s through the civil war and republican transition, offer both warnings and hope. The path forward will require genuine political reform, commitment to the rule of law, and inclusive governance that addresses the legitimate grievances of all Nepalese citizens, especially the younger generation now demanding change. The international community must support Nepal's democratic institutions while respecting its sovereignty and allowing Nepalese citizens to determine their own political future. What are your thoughts on Nepal's political future? Do you believe the current crisis can lead to positive reforms, or will it result in further instability? Join the conversation by subscribing to our channel for more in-depth analysis of South Asian politics. Your engagement helps us continue providing comprehensive coverage of these critical global issues. Thanks for watching.